Welcome to Series 2 of the GM Moving podcast, where we share with you how we're enabling people to get moving. I'm Eve, Strategic Director at Greater Sport, leading, supporting and connecting GM Moving, Greater Manchester's movement for movement. Supported by investment from Sport England, Greater Manchester partners have been taking a whole system, place-based approach to embed physical activity into everything, for happier, healthier, more connected communities and active lives for all. In each episode, we share stories of what this looks like in action in each of the 10 boroughs of Greater Manchester. I'm back in Manchester Central Library for today, speaking to Angela Martin and Stacy Partridge from Manchester Active. And Jane Gardiner is joining me today as one of my colleagues at Greater Sport and the strategic lead for the GM Local Pilot Network. Manchester is estimated to be home to over 500,000 people. The latest Active Lives data suggests that 72% of the adult population are now moving for at least 30 minutes a week. Activity levels are lower, however, for children and young people, and over 30% of adults of South Asian, Black and other minority ethnic groups are moving for less than 30 minutes a week. This inactivity increases to over 40% for people in lower socioeconomic groups and over 50% of people over 75. Today we'll hear about the great work that's going on locally to build relationships and trust between people and partners in place to address these patterns and enable active lives for all. So let's dig in and find out why moving matters to local lead Stacey.
For me, moving is about the competitive element. I love being challenged through a range of different sports. Mainly football has been kind of the key sport that I've taken up from the age of 7, but then playing a vast amount of sports. Recently started playing tennis, and since I've had a dog is walking. They've been kind of the key things, and then I'm also they're trying to get me to join a rounders team as well. So
who's trying to get you to join a rounders team?
One of my friends, she got injured playing football, and so she's trying to get me to go down and play, but it's flat back and I usually play round back. So
oh right, there you go. Well, shout out to your friend who's clearly an activator and getting you to try something else this summer. Well done. And anything in particular that you get out of being active?
It's a socialising element and creating more friends from it and got a common interest.
And you, Jane?
Yeah, probably a mixture. I played netball for a long time, probably more for the social element. We had quite a nice kind of group of friends that have grown from that. Then being outside, like riding my bike, walking, running, I think it just gives me that little bit of headspace, kind of free time just to get out and work through whatever's going on in my head.
What's it look like for you then, Angela?
So I've always been active at school, love sports, but probably wasn't particularly great at them, and the competitive element isn't for me. But yeah, I learnt to swim as a kid. My parents were really big walkers. We walked everywhere. That was like our main mode of travel. They took us to every park across Manchester and Greater Manchester. So I really got that love of being outdoors. I do a lot of walking, walk daily. Got into kind of gym and fitness in my sort of like late teens, and I've pretty much always had some kind of gym membership up until I had children. Didn't have the time. Luckily there was like a workplace offer. It's a yoga class, a circuit class, and that was just absolutely perfect for me. I could fit it into my day. And I think the other thing about being active for me is quite often it's been my only chance to get my me time. So yeah, fitness is a big thing for me. Done a bit of kind of social jogging with friends in between kind of us having kids and things. We sort of regroup and really want to get into cycling this year. The kids are kind of getting into cycling now, so it feels like we can start to venture that bit further. It's a life skill for them, isn't it? And giving them confidence to cycle on roads, etc. And hopefully that's something that they'll have as a behaviour as they grow up and, they'll cycle to school, etc.
So how old are they?
I've got a 6-year-old who doesn't like walking and cycling and a 10-year-old who loves walking and cycling. So So yeah, complete opposites. We've found scooting with the youngest one is just perfect. You know, try not to say we're going for a walk, just say we're going out. You just kind of think of all these ways of kind of getting everybody out. And actually it benefits me because I can walk faster, so I can walk briskly.
You certainly learn, don't you, as a parent, how to design moving in by stealth. It's a good it's a good way of then bringing it into your work.
Yeah.
So getting stuck into your jobs and your role and the Manchester local pilot. So starting with you, Stacey, can you just tell us a little bit about your role and what the local pilot looks like in Manchester?
For me, I'm quite new to the local pilot, probably been about 6 months in, aren't you?
Yeah.
For me, it's been really, really good to look at them, come in with kind of a new fresh pair of eyes and have a look at how everything's going, learn about all the different projects that have been happening and looking and challenge people in the way that they've looking at their principles and their approaches to the way that they're doing things and build them relationships. So that's been like kind of my key for six months, is just building them relationships, building that rapport, learning about everything that's happening and going on, not just within the pilot but within them communities as well, to kind of look at that whole system approach and what are the contributing factors to the way things are happening within that community.
And you've got a focus, haven't you, in some particular communities and setting the context. I mean, Manchester's huge and densely populated. You know, it's the equivalent, isn't it, of often about 3 different local authorities in one. So it's kind of helping people kind of picture, you know, the size, the complexity, the diversity of the population, the different needs.
Yes, so we've got 4 areas across Manchester, one being in the south, which is Woodhouse Park in Wythenshawe. We've got Newton Heath and Miles Platting in the north, and then we've also got Ancoats, Beswick, Clayton and Openshaw. So we've got quite a big remit across Manchester, and we've also got looking at 4 target audiences across them, which is children and young people in an out of school setting, people who are unemployed or at risk of being unemployed, people with a long-term health condition or at risk of getting a long-term health condition. And the idea around it is because that could potentially make up with quite a lot of the families who are in the neighbourhoods that we was working in.
Great, thank you. And Angela, you've been involved for longer.
I'm one of the managers in the health and wellbeing team, which is where we sit and lead on walking, cycling and the pilot. So I came into role sort of end of 2019. We've got a target audience, the place-based working, the target audiences, but then we have a second tier of work which is around walking, cycling, and that's citywide. So myself and Laurel, our walking and cycling officer, our roles are really to pull that together and connect things and collaborate with other partners who also are working in that area and have that agenda. So we call them the 2 tiers of the Manchester local pilot.
And then Jane, so your job is kind of that weaving and pulling people together across all the different 10 local pilots, the 10 different districts in Greater Manchester, and then obviously GM as a whole. So you get to spot the patterns and the similarities and differences.
And really to kind of bring people together to share their learning. So obviously it's a completely different approach to how we were working before. And I think when we first started, there was a lot of nervousness around that. We used to be very much KPI focused and always tell, the good story. And I think something that we have had to get used to within the pilot is, when things don't go as well, that's okay. And I think that's something that we've had to kind of work with all of the locality leads to be comfortable in doing. So we try and, convene that space for people to come together in kind of a supportive network for each other. So I think kind of Manchester's really kind of embraced that and kind of come along to the
nervous laughter there.
To the forums and kind of input and kind of bring, to life their examples, and I think other localities really feed off that, and other localities taking that information and thinking, how can they put that back in their locality and vice versa. So it's really important for everyone to kind of be a part of that and kind of feel as one kind of network rather than 10 individual.
And that's certainly been the beauty when I've come and joined some of the sort of local pilot forum conversations, is just you get that sense of it's a safe space for those honest conversations, and it's so rich, that storytelling and what comes out then in the learning and in the challenges and in the joy that comes when things do work. And that's the point of this podcast, really, is how do we amplify that and help more people to see and hear and get a sense of what it's all about and make it real. And we definitely will be digging into some of the challenges. So that honesty is about having, being honest about when it doesn't work, sort of warts and all. But before we go there, let's talk about the good stuff. So any kind of particular examples of when it's felt good, of things that you're seeing happening that have been made possible because of the local pilot approach?
So when I first came in, there was the Heart and Soul event, and that kind of was celebrating the first phase of the work where they recruited community researchers. They've been out doing lots of talking with residents, finding out what would make Woodhouse Park a healthier place to live. And they managed to go away, have loads of conversations, kind of about over 70 ideas. And then they was able to have a look at them and reduce them down to 26. Yeah, so they managed to look at these 26 ideas, and they went out into different locations across the community to display their ideas of what they've come up with from their conversations. And then they brought this all together into the celebration event, which is kind of a celebration of their work and inviting local people, local residents.
And that was really their time to show off to their friends, family, other residents what they'd achieved. They had an exhibition and a display and photographs and this great artwork, and they were really, really proud on that night of what they'd achieved.
And the feeling that gave me when I went there is like, this is not just any type of event or celebratory event of what the work that they're doing. It really had that feel of, you can tell this is all about them residents, and really they've been at the heart and focus of everything, which goes with the name of the Heart and Soul project. And from working across different things in the community, it was just really refreshing to see. And because if you've seen the residents when they first started to what they're doing now, we had a event last week and they're up talking to local partners. You asked would they do that 12 months ago, they wouldn't have been able to do that. So there's been a lot of work done in terms of supporting that confidence building and giving them the tools to be able to stand up and talk and be proud about what they're doing, and also trying to take that kind of ownership of it as well.
Fantastic.
There was 2 different ways that you did the community engagement, because COVID got in the way.
You're right, we tried to start the Heart and Soul project in 2020. It was all kind of prepped, ready to go, and then it just felt like with the pandemic, community engagement was a bit of a challenge, and we were having to sort of tweak the sessions it felt like almost on a weekly basis. People had to be socially distanced. We hired the biggest hall, within the forum to keep people apart, and we bought visors and hand sanitizer and stuff like that. And it was just difficult to kind of keep the momentum going and the engagement with the residents. Some of it then switched to sort of online, but I think people were just distracted because of the climate at the time, and it just didn't quite sort of land. And we decided to pause it and went back in sort of 2021, went out with a much sort of bigger engagement piece, sort of leafleted the area. It was interesting, we started to get people that wouldn't traditionally engage in a project like that. A couple of them were feeling quite isolated or didn't have particular connections in the local community. Others were looking for things to do. Some came through from contact with other partners, so the family centre and other kind of wellbeing services. We probably engaged with about 25 residents in total, but we got this core group of 8 residents that came to weekly sessions and weekly workshops. And they started to go out and walk the area and discuss the question, what makes Woodhouse Park a happier and healthier place? And they went out and engaged with, I think, about 150 plus residents at key locations across the ward. And they really, owned it. They really took charge of, they went through role-playing that when they were going to be out in public, what they were going to say and what they were going to ask. And engaged with a really wide range of people, from young people to older people, and came back with this massive ideas, 70 plus ideas, which then got condensed because there were lots of similarities. And we held a celebration event in October, and then since then Stacey's been working with them. They've all got their own sort of personal interests in parts of the 26 ideas that they want to take forward. They're currently working most of them together on creating a walking trail. That was one of the priorities. Initially, when they were out and about in the area, they were sort of saying there's nowhere nice to walk, it's not pleasant. If you want to go somewhere nice, you have to leave the area, you have to go out to sort of Cheshire or further afield. And then actually, from exploring the area, they discovered lots of nice places, and that opinion changed. And now they've found a route, a figure of 8, that they've created. It takes in a couple of the parks. They've discovered a wood. So we had a workshop last week, and they presented that to other stakeholders who came along, and we did a bit more of a workshop and a bit of a discussion to see how we're going to take that forward. But that's very much going to happen in the next couple of months. And they actually want to activate the walk as well, so not just create it and create a map or a digital walking offer. They want to take people out on the route and lead walks. They're going to target sort of families and mental health. So they've got lots of ideas, and we're supporting them to pull all of that together.
Sounds fantastic. I want to go and do this leap of 8 now. But what a great example of building that kind of local agency and ownership and voiceover of what happens, and different tools in their bag, from maps to wayfinding to walk leaders, and fantastic example.
The work that we're supporting with Step Up Manchester as well, like a lady called Nicole who's kind of doing all that work in Openshaw, Clayton, Ancoats and Beswick, and it's kind of what she's brought there is she brought local organisations and loads of partners who work in the area, and like created an advisory panel, and then what the support she's been able to activate for people to apply for funding through her. So she's got some funding that she's able to give out, and then but it's the support that she's been giving them, because I found a lot of the issues around is maybe people being able to write a successful application. She's done a lot of work with all the local people in terms of building their confidence, building their skills to be able to apply for stuff. And it's like there's a lady who really wants to start her own forest school, and the support that she's able to give her, that this woman is now it's ready to kind of go, and this support this woman to kind of make her own ambition.
What does that look like in practice? There's been a lot there around kind of building up that confidence you've talked about in both of those examples. In practice, how do you do that? How have you been doing that? What does that look like?
So she's been using an organisation and connecting up with them, and support people with application and bid writing and things like that, and also how and support to maybe become a CIC and things like that. It's rather than just saying, here's this person, can you help them? It's been really more of a partnership, like I've got this person, are you able to come in and support? And it's kind of been like everybody's working together, because Nicole's built that relationship up with them in the first place, and quite often if you just look to give it to somebody else, that person's not got that relationship with them, and it's how you connecting them dots. And I think that's a real big key to everything is the relationships and that trust and support that you give to people enables them people come back to you when they do need help. They will come back and ask you.
So building up that trust and those relationships between individuals, but also between key partners working together in a place.
Yeah, so I think that's been a key success in terms of the relationship building.
So understanding different contributions that different partners can bring.
Most definitely. I think, you've just nailed it in like...
You're doing it then. It's easy to say it. It's another thing to do that in practice and in a pandemic as well.
The early days of the pilot, slightly before my time, there were a number of attempts at engagement in the 4 wards, and it's obviously, engagement's a really significant part of our approach, and it's been a really strong theme throughout the work we do and underpins our work. And I think across all the wards there's different attempts at engagement but didn't quite result in what we were hoping for. So it either led to there was a bigger perhaps need for support and resource than we'd expected, and we couldn't necessarily sort of provide that, or they needed more sort of direction. I think Kim did a piece herself that just resulted in all of this sort of qualitative work, and then it was kind of like, well, what do we do with that now? We've engaged with a partner who works with children and young people over the summer holidays, and that resulted in lots of quantitative data, which we kind of wanted the qualitative data. So we sort of tried all these different ways, and it sort of wasn't quite working, and we couldn't quite find our feet with it really. But that learning led us to then engage with MAC, the Voluntary Community and Social Enterprise representative in Manchester, and start discussing the development of a community engagement programme. So I think without those early days of attempting engagement ourselves, we wouldn't have got to a point where we sort of understood the connectivity with the VCC sector and the need to work with that sector.
Yeah. I was just thinking about the example of working with cycling and working with British Cycling and how you kind of adapted those courses.
Yeah, cycling's a good one. There was we were starting to kind of hear there was a bit of interest in cheating from various people. They didn't necessarily know what they wanted to do, but they were just interested in cycling and they could see that it would benefit the wider community. So we started having a conversation and it led to a number of things really. There was one guy was interested in holding a bike library at a mosque. We recruited 5 residents to go on the British Cycling Ride Leaders training because people knew they wanted to lead rides locally. But the challenge with getting people on the training, there was sort of all of these barriers. They didn't have a bike, they didn't know how to cycle, they'd not cycled for a very long time. So working with Laurel and Beth at British Cycling, we just started meeting them in a park and going for a little bike ride and building confidence. And then that led to kind of linking into FGM to build confidence on roads, etc. So all of these things we were sort of putting into place in order to get a group of people on a training course. We were able to get them through the training. And they started leading led rides, and then we were also approached around the same time by University of Glasgow and British Cycling. They wanted to test the community intervention. So again, we sort of went into Cheetham in December and had an engagement session. Didn't know if anyone would turn up, and we had probably 25 plus ladies that came through the door. Many couldn't cycle, but they were just really eager to hear more. They wanted to learn to ride a bike. It was, for some of them, it was a bit of a dream. It was like a real thing they wanted to achieve. And that programme, the intervention started in, I think, end of January. It was a 9-week weekly session, and we had a pause for Ramadan for 4 weeks. And they've just completed their final session on Sunday.
Fantastic.
And majority have been out on the roads. Everyone's learned to ride a bike, and we had a celebration evening on Monday night. There was just so much love in the room, so much everyone was proud, everyone got a chance to speak, and it's just amazing to hear the ladies talk about this had been a dream of theirs. And one lady said, initially her son had thought this was just a crazy idea, so I just thought it was, silly. And then last weekend he was driving past the park and thought, I wonder if my mum's in the park cycling, I might go and see what she's, how she's doing. Brilliant. And he was really proud of her. And, some of the ladies have started going cycling with children and families. And they just don't want this to stop. I think this is very much, it feels like it's just the start. And equally, the facilitators that have supported the programme have asked if they can come back, can they see how the ladies are doing, they want to support them. It's just interesting from a conversation, an early conversation, not quite knowing what you want to do, how we've kind of been able to tap into sort of the offers and services and develop new things and test new things and just try things really. That test and learn approach has been really, really key. If it didn't work, it didn't work. We've tried it, but people came with us on the journey, so to speak.
Yeah. Some of the women were not sure how they would be perceived as Muslim women riding a bike. So it's really nice that them experience it as realising, no, they can. It doesn't matter of your religion.
It really shifts cultural norms, doesn't it? About it being for everybody in a way that works for them. I'm sure the listener could hear kind of the joy coming out, but watching your face then, and you can just see that sense of the joy it does bring, doesn't it, when things work, and that shift there of influencing other partners and how they're working, their processes, that shifting, say the examples there, Stacey, of how investment flows and how it works, all really key kind of enablers in how we make this change happen. So lots there about a lot of the good stuff that's really working, and you started to touch upon some of the things where you'd had to adapt and learn. But I guess to dig into where it's really challenging, what has been really difficult or the biggest challenges you've faced so far?
For me, I'd say in one of our projects called Seeds of Joy in Miles Platting, I think a challenge that we've found is maybe the engagement. So a big thing was people's perceptions of saying oh, they don't engage in mouse plant and they don't do this. And when people are saying like, oh, they won't turn up to this, and you're just kind of thinking, okay, and what we've kind of been looking at it, I mean, rather than listening to what they're saying in terms of they won't turn up, we've just been kind of thinking, right, what can we do differently to attract this neighbourhood and engage these residents across in this community. And then we've been having like a gardening session going on every Tuesday 1 till 3. And it's taken a good 2 months, I would say, just to get 4 community gardeners to be involved in that community garden and be there regularly and trying to take that ownership, which now 2 of them have got their own set of keys to kind of go into the garden whenever they want, and for us 4 has been like a really big success.
I'm really interested in your community engagement and how you did it differently. So you said you were learning from how the partners had done it before and they're saying like they weren't engaged. How did you get those 4 gardeners?
So one of the ladies, she'd always been part of, she made me laugh actually, because I turned up to a community event for something else, of another project. I sat there on a table with her and was doing kind of like a mapping exercise, and she just stood up, she went, there's not even many residents here, there's only a few of us, and it just made me laugh to think actually everybody in the room, and they was trying to do it for the community, and this was about them having the residents involved. So from then on I thought, okay. And then what we did, we've had the garden open more, and she's been going past and kind of seeing the space open. And Olivia, who's been doing there, she's been doing speaking to her, and it's just built her confidence up to kind of go, I'm always walking past the garden, if I just had a key I can go in, and it's just built up in time of like things falling into place, I think by chance with that person. And the other 2, they came to a community event last year, and then they kind of stayed for a little bit longer, and each time they came to an event they kind of carried on coming, and then they realised that the gardens over the road from, because we did a lot in another garden called Holland Street, which is further down the road, and now this year we've concentrated on another space called the Ridgeway Street Garden, and then they live over road facing it, and they work full time, but they've been coming in on the times off and the weekends to kind of help maintain that garden and keep on top of it. So that's opened over a period of time, of them first being involved in the Seeds of Joy last year, and then that's kind of then followed on by trying to keep them involved in everything going forward. So that's been really key. And then the other 4th one is actually a lady from a project from Heart and Soul in Wythenshawe. She was one of our community researchers there, but she's moved to the north. And so we knew she had been interested in, and now we can't keep her away. So
Fantastic.
And we've been doing a lot of work in terms of how we're linking in with a lot of the partnerships, and it's almost as if everyone's doing their own thing, and that co-work and production and people working in collaboration with each other isn't quite at that point of everyone working together. How can we put that as part of our work within the Seeds of Joy and bring people together into it? And we're going to be holding like a partners event to kind of bring people into the same room and kind of talk and kind of ask people, but using Seeds of Joy as that kind of anchoring, because we've met with them all, spoke with them about the project, so we really want to get them into the same room. And I think that's another thing, people then don't turn up. But I know we're talking about the challenges. We held our first family-friendly event, which is about, we create little activities where people would go on little like nature treasure hunts, where they had to go and find these cards and answer a question. And we had over 100 people come to this.
They did turn up.
They came up, but we did a lot of pre-work with that. We went door knocking. We kind of found the time between 4 and 6 was a good time, where just before they was making the tea, or might have just sat down to eat it. We managed to go around and we give them a little voucher and said like they could win certain prizes, like they're coming along, and free refreshments, and everything was free there. And I think that was the first time the community have actually really all came into one of the community spaces that they've got. The activities that they didn't realise that we was getting them to do were getting them active, moving around the garden, and just a really nice day for people just to come and see something different. And the people we did the door knocking and give the vouchers to, we had about 70 vouchers given out. I think there was about 57 them came back and put them in from the door knocking and the individual tickets that we given out. So it's shown to us that the people we did connect with beforehand to promote it and bring them along, that really did actually play a big part. And other people were saying to us, oh, we did some door knocking, some other like local partners, and we tried to give them a plan and talk to them, but we weren't interested.
So changing those perceptions of whether people get involved and how to engage and involve people, and the mix there of actually going to people, literally knocking on people's doors, speaking to them where they're at, and you turning up for them, and then to expect for them to turn up in other spaces that maybe aren't where they naturally go. So.
So my learning from that is like not always listening to what other people say. Learn it for yourself and ask questions about how they did it and what they did to then maybe how you do something, and so if you can slightly do things a little bit differently to maybe get a different outcome.
And have you seen that influence of the work then in other people's perception of how they're trying to involve people locally?
Well, one lady seen the space and she was like, oh, I'd love to really do something for the Jubilee within this space. And I think what she didn't realise how short of a turnaround that was. But it actually started, that thought process is actually they may be able to use this community space to do something. And hopefully by next year, that's maybe something we're aiming to get to, is that they see this community space as theirs and they're taking that ownership and they can run their own activities, and that would be a real positive for that community due to it has a lack of community venues and spaces to be able to use. So if they can start creating positive association with the space, then I think that would be a really positive for that community.
I love the Seeds of Joy name as well, because it sounds exactly like what you're doing, really.
And these are the names that the community researchers have come up with. So this is we call this the co-creation team. So last year we had a group of 3 local gardeners, and they made up the co-creation team, and they did all the support with the planning, the support with the events and activities. And then this year we've made a Seeds of Joy kind of a subgroup, and it's made up of about 14 local residents then as well, and then they come and be part of it. So like, for example, when we did the event, they kind of did like an arts and crafts stall, and they've been invited to be like kind of help design what these events look like and be part of them. So then now we create this subgroup, and then we're going to be looking to, because we have to think carefully about not bringing loads of people in and ruining the co-creation group, but we are subtly going to be bringing 1 or 2 more into it to kind of build a bigger picture and bigger group. And then
that's really important, because it's felt like there's a very small number of residents who are managing and maintaining some quite small kind of green spaces, community gardens, and one of the aims is to connect that together so they can build that support network and build kind of resilience and upskill other residents, and also there's another kind of walking theme to that as well, that there are these great assets that people are looking after, and they're lovely, and how can we encourage people to come out of the houses and start to go and explore these community spaces and link them together, so that naturally creates a place people can go and walk to and from.
That's our July event. So we've got 5 local community gardens that they're going to walk to all these different gardens, and the gardens are going to get to show off and show their different spaces and the work that they're doing. And so that's going to be our focus of one, that the walk into the different gardens and seeing it, but also we do see gardening as well as getting people moving and getting people active around the spaces. So
such great examples of how people often don't realise some of the assets they've got in their own neighbourhood, and we saw that during COVID, didn't we? People suddenly discovered what gems they've got on their doorstep, and how we can amplify that and create that pride of place. And I guess final questions. We started off at the beginning, Jane, and you were talking about the importance of shifting kind of metrics and measures of success. So, and you've talked a lot about sense of how it feels. So I'm just wondering, any key learning around how you'll know that you are making progress if we're not using some of those traditional counts of bums in seats?
Utilising the residents who if they're on the co-production team or they're on the community researchers team, and gathering their stories and their journey. So from when they started to what they're doing now, I think that would be a good measure to then get their perspective on things. I think that would give people a good insight into the projects and how things have worked, because each of them will have their own story to tell, and they'll all have benefited slightly different ways and to what others have.
Brilliant. We'll bring on more storytelling and more feedback, and thank you. It's been an absolute pleasure. So thank you very much to all of you, and I look forward to hearing what's next and seeing it and feeling it. And enjoy the rest of your day. Take care. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to this GM Moving podcast episode. We've heard how moving matters to everybody and how we can all play a role to design moving back into everyday life. Now, we'd love to hear how you keep moving and the ways you are supporting others to live an active life. You can contact us on our socials. We're on Facebook and Twitter. Just search Greater Sport and don't forget the hashtag GM Moving in Action. Please do share this episode with people and organisations who will find it useful. And join the movement for movement. A big thank you to everyone who's investing in this work and playing their part to test, to learn and to make this happen. This series is a Mike Media production.